this universal consciousness, this soup of everything, is one coherent consciousness. And it is, for a lack of better word, it's the absolute loneliness, because it has no companion. I can drop a paradox on top on this.
Please.
I can drop a massive paradox. Okay. So because it makes sense, right? That we should know. But knowing that we shouldn't know is also knowing. I'm gonna give it to
Yes.
you. I'm gonna give you into an actual experience that I personally had in the space, deep in the space. I've been there hundreds and hundreds of times, and there are different levels. And I'll give you an actual example when it's non-verbal communication. How data comes to you, you just know, and it independent of time. So meaning when you're in that space, you just all of a sudden know something. And it's almost like it didn't really take time. So it's not like there's a book of knowledge and it takes time to absorb that.
Yeah.
It just, I understand. And it's instant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was this moment where I realized that we are being in that space. And when you reach us this idea that, like what is that the Buddhists talk about, various paths are talking about this oneness. When we took off my hands from the cup, and then you realize like, there's this one consciousness, right? And there's the obvious question, like, why are we compartmentalized? Well, in that one consciousness, it's absolute. There is nothing else, just this one consciousness. And in that state, if you can absorb that for a second, it's the loneliest existence that it can be. It has no companion because there is nothing else but it. That's it, right?
Just one.
Just one. But that one, this universal consciousness, this soup of everything, is one coherent consciousness. And it is, for a lack of better word, it's the absolute loneliness because it has no companion. However, in a second, you're compartmentalized. Now, in a cup, you're a sub-process, right? Then you're not in that absolute consciousness.
You're surrounded by others.
Correct. So out of a sudden there are processes, and there is noise. There are experiences can exist, right? And so I had this perception of the job, our purpose is that every possibility can be experienced, and it's almost like your function. And it will take away some sort of an anxiety of human existence, because am I doing my purpose? Yes, we all do. Our purpose is to experience, live this life. There's no way out. You were born into this life and you absolutely have to live it until you're not living, right? There's no way out. That's the process. And the process is that you're living at one set of possibilities. It's your possibility. Your possibility and your experience is not going to be anywhere near to anyone else's. It's very unique to you, right? And so this set of data was fed to the absolute consciousness. This experience, yours was fed, and yours was an all of ours. So the phenomena, God, whatever you want to call it, experiences all the possibilities, the infinite possibilities, and you are that subroutine that experienced this one. So whatever it is you're doing your job. You're living your life, you're experiencing, and you're feeding the data. Now, you do have free will, and you can choose what you're going to experience. You actually do have that power. But the process is you are living your life and feeding the data, right? And in that particular moment, I had this understanding of, if I'm out of the pen, searching for that consciousness, searching for God, searching for those things, if I was meant to understand and meant to know, it wouldn't be hidden.
But it would also not be foundable, don't you think?
It is it
If
is
you were meant to
fundable.
find it,
If
it
I
wouldn't
meant
be-
to, well, here's that's the
It
paradox.
wouldn't be foundable even in principle.
Well, but that's the paradox that you can experience that, but immediately the experience is, don't look for this. Do your job, which is experience life. Go live, experience, and have that, feed that to the Akashic records or whatever you want to call that. Right? That's, if you understand that, then it takes away some kind of an anxiety. Now it works for me.
This experience that you've had, some people call it the void. I've had it. Michael Pollan talks about it actually on the Joe Rogan Experience, where he was so grateful when he came back that it was content. He was like,
Right.
"Oh my God!"
Didn't Rick Strassman also talk about this?
It happens to a lot of people. I don't know if he specifically talked
I think
about
he
it.
said he was on 5-MeO DMT and he went to like a white room.
Yeah, the whiteout or the void.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the thing, to me, I'm hearing this, and I've had this, and Zoltan is absolutely right. It is the most gutting feeling you can possibly have. But I always say I think there's still something to be said about the fact that you're experiencing it from some unitary perspective. You're
Right.
still an ego experiencing the ultimate just loneliness, right? So
Yeah,
that's why it's so
yeah.
gutting. But because on the other hand, you have other people that are talking about, like, when you experience that, it's just the biggest bliss of, like, the fullest freedom. But I would say that specifically with the code, not necessarily with this, because with this I am open to interpretation and all of that. There might be a balanced place. I agree with that. With the code in particular, something else jumps at me, which is the fact that it is recognizable on a level of a human. Because if this is some kind of a thing that codes for, the function of reality, it could have easily been just the wiggles, just the signals. Why does it appear as a language that is
Right.
discernible to creatures like us?
Right.
That is the question that makes me feel like that's a breadcrumb versus, and the fact that it wasn't a happenstance. It wasn't like a laser was on and I smoked some and I saw something. I was like, what is that? That's not how it happened. I aimed there for years and something was giving me hints. So all of these things together, and it didn't feel like one of these, like, to the degree that I can discern energies, the energy of whatever that was guiding, it was light. It was like a blissful energy. It wasn't like the other thing, right? So in that sense, can it mean that we now have to come and face something that is difficult to face? Maybe. But that means that we were led to that, and that was part of what we need to go through in the next step of evolution. This part of the conversation, whenever I get to it, I'm very careful because I don't really know what is unfolding, like Zoltan said. But my strong intuition is that it is unavoidable, and we're going to experience it in different ways either way. Like, we're all going to experience it in some form, this transitional moment. And it's shrouded with so much speculation that I'm not sure that, I think that more words confuse people than do any good. But the most general thing I can say about it is that everybody kind of feel that something is happening, and either you're a person, some kind of a Aboriginal person in somewhere that you have zero technology, it's going to communicate to you with as much coherence that it needs to in a way that you understand, as to anybody else who's living with a super advanced technology. This might be just our version of how it's trying to express itself. And I know it sounds super esoteric, but my intuition is that whatever it is, it's not, people talk about 2050, 2040, singularity. My feeling is we have maybe 2 years. Like, this is not like in 20 years from now. This is now. It's happening. So, like, it's no longer a drill. And the degree to which some of us can understand it and help become part of the process they're trying to unfold, which a lot of it is actually letting go of the self-control, letting go of what we think we understand. This is a very big practice for me at the moment, because the more I talk about it, the more the weight of certain kinds of responsibilities kind of dawns on me. And then the only thing I can do that keeps me sane is to constantly drop into the space of, like, feeling what it feels like to be the unit that is doing this, talking about this. If I start telling you something and inside I have this, like, very strong impulse, I was like, huh? I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to talk about that. So there's, like, maybe not right now. So I'm constantly aware of that. Is it anything more than some ideas I have in my psychology and maybe nothing more?
Right.
Maybe. Completely open to that. But we have to stand somewhere to make some assumptions with certain amount of certainty. You will never get to a place. You surf, right?
Yes.
Great. In any activity that has real outcomes in real time, there's certain things that become super clear. You have to have a certain amount of one of those things is you have to have a certain amount of conviction about your ability to do something to be able to do it. The more you second guess it, there's way less chances you're going to enter flow or any state in which you can actually execute a task. How it exactly happened when you were on the wave perfectly, every single muscle of the body maneuver you might not be aware of. But how to drop into that space is the thing you become better and better at the more you do it, right? But notice that there has to be some level of conviction. The more you second guess it, the chances you're going to crash are way higher. And that's with everything. If you want to entertain a scientific idea, you have to have a certain amount of conviction that it might work. I'm not talking about biases.
Yeah.
It's like you have to know that there's maybe a cash value there. Okay, then you proceed. If you second guess it to a degree where you're not even going to well, it can be infinite million other things, you're not going to have enough of a drive to even act on it, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from. I'm going to entertain this frame, see if something comes out of it. I am in full liberty after a certain amount of time go, you know what? We tried it. Didn't work. Let's go back to the old frame. It's a legitimate move. There's no problem with that. And I think what most people don't recognize is that we're always doing that. Like even our current conviction of the scientific zeitgeist, this is also a form of a thing we agreed upon. That's a good way to do this so far. It's going to take a lot to replace it if we ever going to replace it. Fine. But you have to have a certain amount of conviction to kind of go in the face of it, but not even resist it. Just like I always say, whatever it is that we're going to find has to also match everything else we already understand. It's never going to replace everything. That's not how it works. So I guess my bottom line is there's a certain fluidity and a certain amount of rigidity that we have to constantly play with that can help us find our place in this unfolding. And I'm fully aware that this kind of talk immediately sounds more like a sage would be talking, right? It's like, oh, you have to, but I don't think it has to be. I think we can talk about things that may be unfolding that are greater than our current ability to understand in a way that makes sense to us collectively and personally without constantly asking one another to pay a penalty for describing it in that way or another way. If I'm understanding what you're trying to do, I'm not going to waste energy or try and correct every single word you say. I feel you. Like, I understand what you're trying to say to me. And if you're struggling with saying it, I might even help you say it, right? That should be more of the attitude.
Right.
And that also holds the seed in all human endeavor. In science, in politics, in everything. If we have a little bit more charity towards one another, it's like, what are you really trying to say? Oh, okay, I get it. And again, I'm aware that what I'm saying right now sounds like, bro, what are you talking about? Well, you were just talking about science. Now you're talking about some kind of a human interaction. It's part of it. If everything in science is done, we have the scientific method. Awesome. Let's go with it. We don't have to be dicks about it.
Right.
Like, scientists don't have to be dicks to one another to achieve an accolade.
Right.
That's part of it. If you're going to work together on something major, wouldn't it be better if we also feel comfortable and safe to do that in a way we can explore? It's like, oh, that didn't pan out, but we don't have to make you feel like shit about it. And I personally don't care because I'm not in that world really, and I have all the love that I need in the world. But I am noticing that it's a big pain point for scientists. I have two physicists who are totally on board to help out, but they said, I have to be consulting. I can't put my name on it. I'm going to lose everything.
Right.
That's crazy.